Welcome back to another weekly episode of the Rainbow Bridge Podcast. I'm your host, Miss Nayshondra Mercer, but as always, you can call me Coach Nay. And oh, by the way, today, we're going to be talking about how you are the new thing. Welcome back, friends, to the Rainbow Bridge Podcast. I'm so excited for today's episode. In full transparency, I haven't prepared for this one in the same way that I normally do. Not to say that I haven't prepared, but just to say that this process today has been slightly different in that I am going to pick up with the same message that we started last week, where I talked about it's time for a new thing. And in my prayer and meditation about what this week's episode should be, I very clearly heard it in my heart, in the back of my mind, the words, stay here. So I'm going to trust that, follow my intuition, listen to my spirit, and I'm going to stay here. And so where I want to start is taking it all the way back to the very beginning in episode 1, where we talked about our friend in Plato's allegory of the cave and him leaving his cave. And since that episode, my friends, we've come quite a ways where we've discussed his transition from darkness to enlightenment, how he was beaten and judged and ridiculed for his new belief, and how he left his cave to embark on discovering this new world, this new enlightenment, this new understanding. And this story is also running parallel alongside my own personal story, in which I've been sharing with you all my walk with God, and specifically my walk with Christ, and what that has meant for me as a woman in her journey who has so many different pieces of herself. So I shared with you all about who it is that I love as being a same-sex attracted woman, as a woman who goes to church, as a woman who believes in kingdom, all of these different things. Well, something else I want to share with you all today, a little deeper about who I am and how this walk with God relates to our friend leaving the cave, is that when it's time for God to do a new thing, when you are leaving the cave that our friend was in the allegory of the cave, and you're embarking on something new, something that you've never experienced before, whether that's getting a promotion to a job, it might be entering into a new relationship and finding love again after being heartbroken or having years of separation with another or being in isolation. It could look like possibly wanting to move forward with a relationship with maybe a parent that you have had a strained relationship with, and wanting to pave a different way forward for you so that those who come behind you, maybe even your own children, won't have to see the same things happen that you did. And I talked about how that looks like in this world, and I like to think of that as a generational curse. Generational curses, as they talk about in the church a lot of times, is always attached to sin. But my understanding and more modern depiction of it today is it's anything that keeps us doing things that we don't need to do anymore. Thinking in old ways, behaving in old ways that makes us recreate, or shall I say manifest, those same things from the past into our present. And this can be a very controversial topic, but it's what's on my heart. So I'm going to lean into it and talk about how these generational curses, or these caves that we leave, resembles the same journey that we talked about last week with the children of Israel leaving Egypt and going into the wilderness in order to get to their promised land. Just like the children of Israel, just like our friend in the allegory of the cave, when they first left their caves, whether it was the actual cave or whether it was Egypt, they found themselves in a transition space that they had never experienced before. With our friend in the cave, he's now seen light. He's seen the outdoors now for the first time in his life. And the children of Israel have now gotten a taste of what it feels like to not be in bondage, to not have their safety and protection completely just, I don't even have the words for it. on a daily basis, just undermined and being beaten and bruised and just abused their entire lives, to going into this wilderness that looks unfamiliar, place they've never been to, but where all their needs are being met and where they can unlearn the things that they learned when they were in Egypt and or in their cave. And I shared that this space of being in the wilderness is where God is able to show you that he's doing a new thing. And we talked last week about whether or not we're able to see what that new thing is or not. And I want to stay here because what I find is this space here of being in the wilderness, of just leaving the cave, of realizing that there's something new, better, more out there than you ever realized, is the place that people get the most uncomfortable. And it makes sense that they would be really uncomfortable when they are in transition from one place to another because they've never been there before. But the thing that is interesting, and that we saw in the story with the children of Israel and also with our friend in the cave, is this desire to go back as soon as they exited the cave or when they exited Egypt. In both stories, we see them go back, even though in different ways. With our friend who's in the cave, he goes back to deliver others. He's unsuccessful, and then he continues on his solo journey. But with the children of Israel, they want to go back when they felt like the going was getting too tough. And that the place between where they were and where they were going was taking too long. And my friends, what I want to say to you today is don't rush your healing and unlearning process, because that place from one place to another, from the cave to the sun, from Egypt to the promised land, both situations have a middle ground. And that middle ground is the place where the things that once were can no longer be. And this is the place where God is doing the new thing. And the new thing that he is doing is inside of you. And the thing that he is doing inside of you is changing your mind, your mindset, the way that you think about things. He's changing the way that you feel about prior experiences, changing the way that you used to do things, breaking up your routine a little bit. Also, that when you finally leave the wilderness and you can shake the dust off of your feet and enter into your promised land, get that job, get that house, get that car, get that guy, get that girl, have that family, go on the vacation, do the thing, right? Once you finally enter it, you won't mess it up or mishandle what God has given you because you were prepared beforehand in your in-between to manage the promise. And so in not rushing that space, my friends, you're giving yourself an opportunity to double down on receiving the manifestation of your promise because you took the time in your waiting season to make sure that the old pieces of you that could not go into your new season died where they were, that they stayed in Egypt or they stayed in the cave with the other folks who didn't want to come with you. Because when God is elevating you, there are times where everybody can't go with you. And that's okay. That can be hard for people to hear or to receive in their hearts. But everybody can't go with you. And we see that demonstrated by our friend who leaves the cave. But just like our friend who left the cave and went back to help his friends who were not ready to leave, he didn't decide to go back in that cave and stay there and rot to death with them. That was not what he did. He continued to press forward towards the new thing, even though he didn't know what it was, because he knew that whatever it was better than where he had been. And where he had been was dark and dank. It was depressing. And he knew enough about that space to know that he didn't want to live there anymore. And even though he didn't know what the space in front of him, his wilderness, that space in between, the place where we can unlearn, even though he didn't know what that was going to look like and what it could entail, he still chose to move forward anyways, because he knew that that new thing had to be better than the devil that he knew. And the devil that he knew belonged in the cave that he left. And so, my friends, I ask you, when you find yourself in transition, going from one place to another, and you're unlearning all the pieces of yourself that can't go with you into your next, are you going to continue to press forward towards the promise that God has for you? Or are you going to get uncomfortable in the change that is happening within you and go back to the devil you know? Or will you be like our friend who left the cave? And a good many of the Israelites who did eventually continue the journey and make it to their promised land, will you push forward and get to the thing that you pray for, to see the manifestation, which is the physical illustration of the things that you have prayed and thought about and asked God for, put on your vision board, kept on the screensaver on your phone, the things that you kept writing about in your journal, the dreams that you kept sharing with your friends. When those moments come to pass, are you going to be ready to receive it? And my friends, I would say that you'd be ready to receive it if you take time in the wilderness, because God is doing a new thing. And that means that the old way has to go away. And even the old ways within you have to go away. And so, my friends, before I leave you today, I'll leave you with this question. What are the things that you need to unlearn in the wilderness? What are the thoughts and behaviors and the feelings that you need to leave in Egypt or in your cave, so that when you get to your individualized, God-given promised land, that you won't mismanage your blessing? Thank you for rocking with your girl once again for another episode of the Rainbow Bridge podcast. I really appreciate y'all rocking with your girl yet another week. And I hope you come back next week, because we're going to continue this conversation and talk to you about how God has also been doing a new thing within me. In that episode, I'm going to talk to you about the power of self-awareness and how awareness put me on. Until then, my friends, be safe and stay well.
This has been a Forecast Media Podcast Network presentation. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. For more information and more great Forecast Media content, visit pushplaypods.com.